Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more waterfowl patterning, and today we've got another very interesting combination to try, and it's one that should give us a really nice pattern. It's been a good long while since we've tested this choke on the channel, and I don't think we've ever ran it with shells like this. We know these are good shells, so if this choke is a decent performer, then we should see a nice pattern. But for the shells I brought out here today, they're not in any kind of fancy package, but these are some Salt Creek shells. They are a 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, ounce and a quarter payload of bismuth number 4s, moving about 1250 feet per second. We tested these a week or two ago, and I believe we started with a modified choke, and they showed us some nice performance for a starting point. But we needed just a little bit more constriction, I think, and today's choke might just do exactly what we want out of these. And as for today's setup that I've got to run them through, I brought out the Remington 1187 with this choke, which is an Avian-X Crusher. It's their heavy modified waterfowl choke that is straight rifled. And when they say heavy modified, it's essentially an improved modified. It sits right between a mod and a full choke, but it is kind of their own thing with their porting and their straight rifling and stuff, which has done well with most shells we've run through any of their Crusher series chokes. So I expect with this being an improved modified constriction, it should do well with these shells. If we see something weird, it's probably going to have to do with the straight rifling and the porting that this choke has. So we'll see what happens, but I expect to see something pretty decent. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the duck target at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity out of the shells as well. So let's get you guys to view this target and take this shot and see just what kind of a pattern we can get from these Salt Creek Bismuth 4s through this Avian-X heavy modified choke today. Alright, so that shell read as 1,355 feet per second through the chronograph. Their claim is 1,250, so if this is correct, it is a little bit above that. Now, I can't exactly remember the last time we tested these shells, but I believe we saw right at about 1,300, so this number could very well be correct. And if it is, then we are carrying a decent amount of energy down there for a bismuth shell, as long as the pattern was able to actually hold together, which I haven't gone and looked at the target yet, so I guess let's head down there and see what kind of results we actually got. Alright, now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And we do absolutely have a dead duck here. There's multiple of them right through the chest cavity there that would have absolutely brought him down. Now, obviously, I do think we were a touch off to the right there, which I actually don't think was me on this one. I think it has to do with that particular shot going through that choke, which we'll talk about here in a minute when we look at the wad. But either way, what we see here is a pretty interesting pattern. If we look at the right half of this paper, it is a beautiful pattern. It's nice and even. It gives you a good amount of up and down leeway without a ton of voids or strings or anything like that in there. But if we move to the left, as we can see, we definitely have a few flyers and stragglers and strings and stuff around there, which is not really what we typically see out of Salt Creek shells like this. But I think the choke is the big culprit here. Shells like this can be a little bit tricky sometimes, or act a little bit funny with straight rifling like those Avian-X chokes have. It's not a major or a harsh big rifling groove in that choke, but it is enough to potentially disrupt the wad a little bit on some of these shells, which I think made the difference here. And that's part of the reason why I do think we drifted to the right a little bit. Now, if that pattern was centered up, yeah, you would absolutely have a smoked duck all day long. There's no doubt about that. So this is definitely not a bad pattern whatsoever. I like what I'm seeing, but I can tell that the choke combination didn't perfectly work quite like I wanted it to with these shells, but that's why we test things. We just don't know until we try it. So ultimately, this is definitely not a failure. We can tell that these are some good shells. We just have to find the exact right choke that they really like. So I guess we might have kind of said all we can say about that pattern. I think it pretty much speaks for itself. It isn't perfect, but it's still very usable and shows a lot of promise with the right choke. But I think we need to swivel over and take a look at the wad, or what's left of the wad, I should say, because I think that kind of tells a little bit more of the story as to these results that we saw here today. Alright, well, here is what is left of the wad. It is one of the pedals. These are big 2-pedal wads. I'll put a screenshot up of the last time we tested these here on the screen so you can see what it's supposed to look like. But as you can see, we've only got one pedal. And I looked for a good 15 minutes back and forth across this range, and I could not find the base or the other half of the pedal. So judging by that, I think that probably the other half of the wad, the pedal might have snagged on the straight rifling and kind of just tore it in half as it exited the barrel there, which we have seen happen with some wads in the past through straight rifle chokes. So I definitely think that probably has to do with why we drifted a touch to the right and why we saw some of the flyers and strings over on the left side. That straight rifling just jumbled things up and caught things just enough to kind of mess with our pattern. But on this little piece here, you can see those nice straight grooves along there where that straight rifling did in fact engage with the wad a little bit, but the wad was flying straight. All the grooves are straight and stuff. So definitely very interesting here. I really wish I could have found the other half of that wad, but it probably spiraled off into the bushes somewhere, and such is life really. But I definitely think the wad with that straight rifling in that choke played the biggest role in the result we saw today. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that result right there? We definitely had the makings of a really nice pattern, and that is still a very usable pattern. I just think the combination of that big 2-pedal style wad with the straight rifling in that Avian-X choke just played a little bit against each other here today. I think we're on to the right construction here with that improved modified type of range, because the good portion of the pattern we did have there is very nice. So if we can tune that in with the right choke, I think that being probably an improved modified or maybe a full that is just your flush, or maybe an extended just without porting or anything fancy in it, I think that really is going to be the ticket for these. And who knows, we may try them through a turkey choke as well, because they could surprise us and be a decent turkey shell too. But I guess I'll leave this one up to you guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Is it about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of the Salt Creek bismuth type of shells like this? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? What do you think happened here today? Do you kind of agree with me that the straight rifling might have played a little bit of a factor in us drifting the pattern to the right a little bit and a few of those strings? And maybe is there another choke that you might want to see these shot through? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like to. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.